discussing the crown area today. So many patients believe that the crown area is one area that's easiest to transplant. After all, it's just a bald spot at the back of the head. But the reality is often quite different. In fact, I have found that the crown is often the most technically challenging area to transplant. And if it is planned poorly, then the consequences may not become obvious immediately, but surely they will become apparently years after. Today I would like to briefly explain why I consider crown restoration being so complex, why graft numbers alone are not the answer, and what patients should understand before considering surgery in this respective area. Over the years, when I have performed a lot of the crown area restoration, starting off with the FUT technique and then moving towards FUE, I still believe that this area has its challenges and it remains a bit misunderstood. This is the crown area, also known as the vertex. Patients often ask me, "Doctor, how many grafts do you think I'll need? Can you make this area dense? Can you make sure you completely cover it and that the scalp won't be visible?" But before we even end up discussing graft numbers, we first need to understand why the crown starts to behave differently from other parts of the scalp. The crown has its unique anatomy. So, for example, unlike the frontal hairline, where the hair generally grows in a similar direction, the crown follows a natural spiral pattern, a whirl pattern. And this pattern is often called, as I've mentioned, the whirl, and the hair will radiate from this central point and change direction continuously and angles. And sometimes there are more than just one whirl. So this means that every graft must be placed with precise attention to angle, to direction, orientation, and also spacing between them. A hairline sometimes may be forgiving and small imperfections can be very subtle, but the crown rarely does that. Because the hair grows in these multiple directions, mistakes will become visible from different viewpoints and different light perspectives. So the result might start to appear unnatural even if a large number of grafts has been used. This is why I believe that artistry matters in the crown a whole lot more than graft numbers alone. One big surprise to patients is actually the size of the crown areas. Many people see, let's say, a circular bald spot in the mirror in the light and assume this is relatively small. But when you actually start to measure this particular area, then the surface overall can be quite surprisingly large. Again, let's not forget the donor area is finite, it's limited, so every graft transplanted into the crown will come from this permanent donor zone. And because the crown often requires a high number of grafts, it can consume a substantial proportion of your available donor area supply. And this is when responsible planning and long-term planning will become critical. As a surgeon, I must decide, do we focus on maximum density today, or do we plan ahead and we try to preserve a donor reserve for the future? And in many cases, I believe that this second option is the wiser one. The crown area often continues to enlarge and over a long period of time. So this is another important concept. The crown is rarely static. Hair loss in this region over time continues and it progresses. A crown can appear stable or plateau at the age of 30, 35, and then it will look completely different at the age of 40, 50. If surgery is performed without planning ahead and considering this future hair loss, then patients may develop what I call that island effect. So we have the transplanted hair that remains, but the surrounding native hair around it continues to disappear. This will end up creating an unnatural appearance and may require further surgery later on. Hair transplantation, again, should not be designed for just next year or the next 2 years. It should be designed, let's say, for at least a decade, if not decades ahead. Another important bit would be, I think, that density is not the main goal here. Many patients focus entirely on density, but density should not always be the sole objective. The crown naturally contains, let's say, a lower visual density than the frontal third and the hairline. But what matters most here is creating that illusion of coverage, that strategic placement through a correct angulation, a natural direction of the hairs, and intelligent distribution. Important principles, I would say, that often create a better result than simply placing the maximum possible number of grafts and hope they will all grow and create a good result. The goal is not to create an artificial carpet of hair to cover that area. One of the phrases that comes to mind now is that obviously donor area management is everything. And I repeat this idea quite often. Remember, your donor area is finite, it's limited. Every graft is valuable. Every graft will represent a resource that cannot be replaced and will not be available for the future. This becomes important as well when treating younger patients, and I see now with each passing year younger and younger patients walking through the door. This is because future hair loss is often unpredictable. You never know how it will behave with all the planning, with all the medication. So a responsible surgeon must always think and balance current patient needs, future requirements, donor area preservation, long-term aesthetics. Then sometimes the best surgical decision will be restraint from surgery, not using every graft that's available, but preserving options for the future. In conclusion, I would say the crown is one of the most, let's say, fascinating areas, if not difficult, in hair transplantation, but it does have its challenges, and successful crown restoration, for sure, it requires understanding this natural whirl pattern, precise graft placement, density planning, of course long-term thinking, and respect for the donor area supply. Because great hair transplantation should not be about chasing higher and higher numbers. It should be about creating that natural result that will continue to look good for years and decades to come.